Oh shit. Oh. Dang it. Crazy drunk album reviewers. Oh god. Alright, so what are you drinking?
Ommegang Grains of Truth Harvest Ale.
And I'm drinking Ommegang Hennepin, although I will admit that my favorite so far is Rarevos. This is tentatively titled Albumholics until we come up with a better name, or if we don't feel like changing it, if it sticks and it's good. This week, our goal was to pick a random video, and we did, through a random drawing. Okay, Mike, you got the numbers?
I got all the numbers. They're 1 through 25 in this plastic thank you bag.
All right. So we had 25 albums recommended, and we don't know exactly what to choose. So Mike drew little slips of paper for 1 through 25. We're going to choose one at random, and we're catching it on video, so nobody can be like, "Hey, you didn't pick mine."
Yeah.
All right. What'd you get?
Ready?
Yep. Go for it.
Okay. All right. It's this one. It is number 9.
Number 9. Number 9. Number 9.
What was the 9th album that we had suggested?
I'm not sure, but I'll take a look at the list.
Right.
Otherwise, it's number 9. This is the first one, so we want to do one at random, and one that was recommended as a joke ended up being the one that we chose. Well, we didn't really choose it. It was chosen at random.
Yeah, at random.
It was Nirvana's Nevermind. So thank you to John Rizzo for the recommendation. Mike, what were your thoughts on it?
My thoughts? Well, this was actually the first time I listened to that entire album as a whole. I mean, I've only listened to probably those, 4 songs that are always on the radio all the time, like Smells Like Teen Spirit, In Bloom, Lithium, Come As You Are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
I'd heard Breed before too.
I've heard Breed before too. But yeah, overall, those songs that I enjoyed on the radio but the other songs were very new to me.
It was different. I was in the same boat. I had never really heard the full album before, but I will admit that when I was young, I did listen to Weird Al's Off the Deep End a lot.
Now I'm mumbling and I'm screaming. That was I probably heard that one before the actual version of Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I'd probably say the same thing. I don't know, but I don't remember because that was a long time ago. But I could probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I was watching something or reading something, and Kurt Cobain always said that was like the highest form of knowing that you've created something really, really wonderful musically is when it got to the point that Weird Al wanted to parody it.
Oh yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
So it's definitely something to note there. But that was a good album too.
Yeah, that was a very good album too. Listened to that many times. So what were your thoughts on it? Just first impressions, or?
Upon listening to it, my first impression is that this is actually a really good example of an album that has an A side and a B side. And if you think about old vinyl records, and they have the term B sides, where they have the songs that aren't like big commercial hits or anything like that.
Right.
They're on the B sides and stuff like that. But this album is exactly one of those where all of the big hits that you listed before are at the very front of the album.
Right.
Quite possibly one of the most iconic things that's synonymous with not only Nirvana but with grunge in general. The song "Smells Like Teen Spirit" is the first track on the album.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely it's stacked like that, and they I don't know if that was a conscious decision or all that they decided to do it like that, but I was wondering if that was a conscious decision because they were planning on maybe releasing the songs like that. They wanted to stack the A side like that. But you know what the funny thing was is that I was reading up on it. They didn't expect this thing to go very far, to do very well at all.
No, not at all. Because like listening to it, I try to get myself in the mindset of like, well, what it would be like to listen to this in what 91, late 91 for the first time.
Yeah.
And like back then, there was probably nothing like this for a mainstream audience at the time. No. So to have this like get out there for like the mass audience to hear was probably as big of a shock to their audience as it was to them, the band themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing about that was like, you know, you're exactly right. It was something that really did a lot for showing that like any form of alternative rock, and in this case grunge, could be something that could be like gobbled up by the mainstream and become like a huge hit and accepted amongst the masses and stuff like that.
Right.
And it was the entire grunge movement, which, you know, had bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and like countless others. You know, more than just the Seattle area, of course, but that was like the main
right.
hub of it. It was like, a lot of those bands were starting to get their start around then, but this is like really the main breakthrough album that led to grunge becoming something that was like socially acceptable, that really people wanted to check out and listen to, and kind of paved the way in a way.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. What were your thoughts on, since we're both drummers, let's say, what'd you think of Dave Grohl's drumming on the album?
I thought it was fantastic. You could really tell that he brought a ton of energy to every single like performance that he did. There was a lot of like, you could just hear it in the recording that he was really hitting very hard.
Yeah, you could. Oh yeah, that energy was definitely there. Like, it was basically you could hear like the influences. Like, he wanted to be more like, well, I don't know for sure, but it sounded like he wanted to be more like a John Bonham type drummer, and it really shows on this album.
Mm-hmm.
And like every note, even like the softer bits on the album, you could hear like the energy into it, and when it got really loud, you could really hear him banging away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was actually his first studio album with Nirvana.
Yes, yeah. I can't remember the name of their drummer off the album before this, but for one reason or another, the drummer left, so they needed a new guy. So yeah, Dave Grohl stepped in and did a pretty good job.
I'd say so. Yeah, he had a lot of energy to his performances, and it was very fitting for the style for sure. So I thought it was a fantastic performance. And I mean, he's a great musician in general, but he's definitely a fantastic drummer.
Yeah,
for sure. I like
the
the rest of the playing on the album too. Like all the rest of the instrumental work was pretty solid.
Yeah,
I was reading a little bit into that they rehearsed the songs so much, like going into the recording process, that they would really, like, for each song they would do like maybe 2 or 3 takes, like instrumentally all together. And if they weren't feeling it, or if they didn't like completely like it, then they would move on to something else, or they would just or if they did like it, then they would keep it and move on. So they progressed through bass and drum tracks pretty quick, but Kurt Cobain took a little bit more to do the rest of guitar overdubs and voice overdubs. He was wanted to spend a little bit more time on those, but the bass and drums for this album, which sound great, they got knocked out really quick. So it's an example of, like, you know, a lot of ways that albums can be done now with overdubbing and things like that, where really like the recording process relied heavily on getting a good performance, and that's exactly what this album speaks to. It's not something that was done with a ton of editing and Pro Tools. It was just really raw performances.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, like the bass and drums were really like rock solid the whole time, and actually like what stood out to me probably the most on this album, in a weird way, was the bass playing.
Yeah.
It seemed like, yeah, like the drums were like really like energetic and like raw power, and there's like a raw power out of like Kurt Cobain and his guitar playing, his vocals, but the bass playing was very clean to me. Like, especially like when the bass is like by itself, like it's just very like staccato, I guess, and you could hear like every note he's playing like precisely, whereas like listening to the drums and guitars is like very raw, like that grunge power into it, whereas like the bass is just very like, it's very clean. That's probably what stood out to me the most on the album.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, you know, sonically speaking, it's just three dudes with instruments. It's not really it's not really anything more than that. So sonically speaking, everything has its place. And but the cool thing is, it's just three dudes with instruments, and it's a lot of sound.
Yeah.
So they did a good job with it, like mix-wise.
It's a good example of like, you don't need a whole like, don't need like 6 or 7 guys in the studio playing different instruments. You can just have like 3 guys doing what they love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, they actually hated the mix when they first heard it, or I mean, they liked it when they first heard it, but then like as time went on, it didn't really grow on them, as much. They really didn't like the mix after a while, which, you know, it surprises me. I think it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And, I liked how it sounded.
Yeah, the mix is like very good. Like, you can definitely hear like every instrument like very, very clearly, like, you know, where everything's supposed to be, and like where they needed to boost something a little bit. They did, and in the right way, not too much, just but definitely in the right way. What'd you think of Kurt Cobain's vocals and lyrics? Because that's probably like from what I've experienced, like what most people talk about on the album.
You know, I didn't really focus on the lyrics as much as I was listening to it. I mean, I know part of it is because, like, in some spots, you know, it's people always make the joke all the time, like Weird Al did, for example, of, you know, not really being able to completely understand like what he was saying.
Yeah.
He didn't really like how people were trying to analyze his lyrics as having some sort of deeper thing, when like sometimes he wasn't always sure what he was gonna say when like they were going into recording, like finishing his lyrics like a little bit like right before they started recording. And I think it was funny that people were trying to analyze it as this bigger, deeper kind of thing, and especially as he poked fun at like when people were transcribing the lyrics incorrectly, like they were misinterpreting them as well. But I thought that his vocal performances were, you know, quite genuine. Is probably the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
It's an example of, like, you know, one of the clear things about rock and roll, as long as it's genuine and there's a good performance and intent behind it, you know, it'll speak for itself versus something that you need to get insanely clean, like in the studio or anything like that. Like, I think some of the harmonies in like On a Plane, for example, are a little rough, like some of them in there. But honestly, the intent and performance and the screaming and emotion put into delivering the words was definitely there, and that's kind of something that's synonymous with a lot of the grunge sound, because I noticed the same thing in a lot of Alice in Chains music as well. Yeah,
I kind of noticed the same thing too with like with Pearl Jam's 10 or like anything from Soundgarden at the time. It's very synonymous, like that raw, just like emotion. Like there's not like too much focus on like getting the right pitch per se, but just like to get close enough, and then just having that emotion and that energy, like just very, very natural energy to it is what it's probably what drive people to this album for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like I told you before this recording this too, I had to read along with the lyrics to it while listening to the album, because most of the time I can't understand what vocalist is saying, so I have to like read along. But with this album especially, because there was like just like there was no way I was gonna figure out what was going on without the lyrics, and even with the lyrics, like, still unsure what these songs are about.
Right.
So
That'd probably be my only criticisms of the album.
yeah,
Is the
I mean, I thought that the song Polly was about a pirate's parrot for a second, but halfway through the song, I was like, wait, that's not what it's about.
right.
Nah, I don't know what it's about anymore.
There probably is a deeper meaning to some of these things, but it's interesting the way he has things written and phrased, and maybe in some circumstances, maybe a little bit of the meaning initially that he wanted to get in there kind of got lost a little bit when he was kind of rushing to complete some lyrics and
Probably.
come up with ideas.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's what happens when you get rushed into doing something. You just have to like throw something down and like hope it works. And I mean, it definitely worked out in the end. But maybe with a little more time, it could have been better.
But the more refined and complete songs, like In Bloom and Lithium and stuff like that, were definitely ones that cohesively could speak to that generation of music listeners and resonate with them.
Yep.
Not only on like a musical level, but a bit of an emotional level too. Something that they could kind of connect with at that time, stuff like that.
Right.
So it's the refined ones. That'd be my only criticism, I guess, is that the refined ones are really refined, and you can tell that some of the ones on the B side, are a little less refined. I don't want to call them throwaway songs because I think the whole album is brilliant personally, but
yeah,
this kind of speaks more to my statement of definitely a dichotomy between A side and B side. The only thing that you could possibly consider a real like throwaway song on the album was Almost Thrown Away. Did you read about the hidden track on the album at all?
No, I didn't. What's that?
There was a song called Endless Nameless where
oh, okay.
they was the first like 20,000 pressings or something like that. The record company forgot to put it on the album.
Oh.
So the rest of the band was like pissed when they found out. So they made some calls immediately, and then they got all the other pressings after that made with like a 13-minute gap of silence, just like a lot of albums within the 90s.
Yeah.
And then they put in the track Endless Nameless, which is very much a noise, like very harsh noise-laden track.
Right. Yeah.
But it was kind of funny. It was almost thrown away, but then they caught it after it got produced. Which I guess I wonder if that's like a collector's item.
It's got to be. If an album that doesn't have that last song on it, it's probably worth a lot at this point, since it's only like 20,000 were made of it,
something like that.
Yeah. So it's got to be a collector's item somewhere.
Whereas like it's sold like an insane amount of copies like worldwide. So I mean that's like that amount of copies sold and made is like a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Mike, when you were looking over the lyrics of the album, what anything of notes that you discovered about the lyrics as you were reading along?
One thing I noticed in a few of the B-side songs, as you mentioned, some of the lyrics tended to repeat themselves, not like where like a chorus like happens. Like obviously that's gonna be the same like with whatever song you listen to, but also with some of like the verse lyrics, they tended to repeat themselves. Like the first verse also was pretty much the same as like the last verse of the song, or even like the very end of the song. It's just tended to repeat itself, like with the lyrically speaking. Probably just another example of them maybe like the B-side songs like getting rushed a little bit too much to get it out maybe. But I mean that's probably the only complaint I would have on the album, is that like if you actually really listen to the lyrics, like which I'm not sure how many people actually do for this album, but if you actually did listen to the lyrics, you'd probably find it tends to repeat itself.
Gotcha. And one of the things I was reading is that I guess the song Lithium, or at least like the single version, was like an amalgamation of lyrics from other songs off the album,
Yeah.
kind of like thrown together. And I have not verified that or checked it, but I'm gonna check that out and try to read it and
Yeah.
analyze it when I get home. But it's just something interesting. I read that
Yeah,
I want to look into that.
Sounds interesting. I'd like to figure that out if it's true or not too.
But yeah, I mean it's a great album. I mean for anybody who's never checked it out, I would totally
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yeah.
You gotta give it a good listen, especially those who are interested more in like where music was going and where it was at
Yeah.
in the early '90s and stuff like that. It's just like a quintessential album.
I would definitely recommend it for that reason. Basically, yeah, I'd just recommend it for like if you want to know what grunge was like at that time, this is the album to listen to.
Absolutely, and it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, but it's also a really good album for anybody who's like just starting out with playing an instrument like a bass, guitar, or drums to sit down and listen to. As I do hear a lot of beginners learning these kinds of songs because they're accessible,
Right.
and they're fun riffs to play that are not too challenging, that you can get going right off the bat and play along with some really fun music.
Yeah, and if you learn these songs like when you're in early age, then you'll more likely continue to go on to play even more songs that way.
Yeah, and I'm not at all saying that like Nirvana's for a bunch of simpletons or anything like that. It's like it's just that they're fun songs to play. Like like Beatles songs are fun to play.
Yeah, exactly.
They're for anybody and everybody.
All right.
What do you think of your beer?
My beer, it's a very good fall beer. They're advertising it as a harvest ale, so it's got a lot of some malt flavors to it. It's very prominent in there. So, what would you think of your Hennepin?
I think it's just like a lot of the other Ommegang beers that I've had. It has a lot of bite to it. It is like a good after flavor. It's not too hoppy, and apparently, if you're adventuring in a canoe, this is the perfect beer to drink while you're adventuring in a canoe going over a waterfall. We do not recommend that you go over a waterfall in a canoe while drinking Hennepin, nor does Ommegang.
But it looks cool.
But it looks like if you were to do that, this would be what you'd want to drink.
Yes.
Some sort of goblet that looks like if you're the navigator, or you're drinking straight out of the bottle if you're in the back doing all the work on the canoe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the grains of truth are, but I'm pretty sure it's basically a way to get alcoholics to tell you the truth.
Yep. I'm sure it'll be used in interrogation at some point.
Yep.
To figure
when
out.
You at least suspect it.
To figure out what your true feelings of Nirvana's Nevermind.
Yes.
Be.
Yes, I figured it was a good beer, so you could tell you what I really feel about Nirvana.
Let me tell you something. So yeah, Nirvana, Nevermind. Go check it out and go drink some Ommegang if you're into that kind of thing. It's good.
It's good stuff. Good album.
And we don't know what we're doing for our next one, but we'll figure that out. We might alternate them with ones that we consciously choose to do, or we may do other random drawings. So if there's an album you'd like us to listen to, we're really interested in stuff we've never heard before, so please leave a comment below and let us know what you'd like us to listen to and give our thoughts on. And if you have any other things that are interesting to note about Nirvana's Nevermind, please also write those in the comments below, because we're always interested in learning things about these albums we listen to. So thank you very much for watching, and stick around for more of these in the future.